Hello, students. Before we start, here's what you need to do to get the most out of your time. Put your phone away and turn off your notifications when you study, including watching this video. You need to actually try the problems yourself and talk out loud when you're learning a new concept. You have to do the new problem with your hand fully. Just saying, I get it, is not enough when you're learning math. Here's a good thing to remember when you're learning anything. Read, write, talk, listen, and move. Also, if you stick around to the end of the video, I will teach you a cool little discipline, focus, whatever you want to call it, exercise, and I'll walk you through it, and it'll help you on the SAT, and it'll help you get what you need to get done. Here's what you have to understand about the reading section. It is ultra, stupidly, obvious once you see it, levels of specific. It is also very, very formulaic. What that means is that I can tell you all the question types in advance and how to think about them all on one slide. In fact, here it is. From the top, we want to look at vocab and transition questions as almost the same thing, because what we're really thinking about are synonyms and putting things into our own words. You have to finish the thought in your head. Say the full sentence. Don't just feel it. Don't just connect it without actually having that discipline, that internal dialogue. I know it's tough. You might not even know what I'm talking about, but the sentence in your head has to finish, and it has to be in your own words. And as a trick, there's always a synonym in the vocab questions, and if 3 of the words don't quite fit after you've done this own words process, pick the 4th answer and move on. In transitions, you want to use this phrase to structure the logic of the sentence. We'll go over an example a little later. It'll make more sense, but the phrase you want to think about is, I was saying this thing, and now blank. As soon as you put it in that format, that way, those words such as therefore, thus, anyways, those things will make a lot more sense, and you'll be able to really understand what the logic of the passage is getting at. For the grammar questions, there's only 2 types, and identifying mostly what you're looking at will help you identify what you're looking for. Once you realize the question is a boundaries question, it's a clause question, then you know to look for incomplete and complete clauses in the final answer. The other type of grammar question you can have is matching, where you're matching a noun to the tense of a verb, to a modifier. And in all of these scenarios, there's this underlying assumption that you know what legal is grammatically on the SAT. Your final answer, again, you have to practice saying the final answer in your head, working at a pace where you can check your work. Your final answer must be grammatically quote unquote legal. Even if it's something you would write, but the SAT wouldn't, you have to go with what the SAT says. Now, here's the crux of this lesson studying for the SAT reading. 50 to 60% of the test is about finding specific logic and specific words and ideas within some part of the passage, question, or answers, maybe a little bit of all 3. These are called logic questions as I define them. The graphs, the conclusion questions, the main idea questions, they all actually fall into this category. In fact, this is so important and so, again, stupidly obvious once you see it. We're going to start with one of these questions, and I'll show you the technique on how to break it down and how to move forward efficiently and have a process in place. Again, though, you have to practice doing it. When a question pops up, if you're really going to succeed on the SAT, then you have to find the discipline and the willpower to just turn everything off for 90 seconds. That's all you need, and actually try the problem. If it doesn't make sense at all, fantastic. At least you tried, and then I will show you how it works. I'll give you a couple of seconds to pause the video and try these 2 vocab questions yourself. Remember, the tips are to look for synonyms or antonyms with some double negatives. Those things are present. You have to watch out for them. And put the answer choices or anything in the passage in your own words as much as possible. And really take your time and confirm the other ones don't fit either. Sometimes you think something fits, but there is a better answer there. and you really have to match it to the synonyms within the passage. Looking at the one on the left, number 3, handedness, a preferential use of either the right or left hand, typically is easy to observe in humans. Because this trait is present but less blank in many other animals, animal behavior researchers often employ tasks specially designed to reveal individual animals' preferences for a certain hand or paw. We are looking for something that is present but less. It's probably going to be something that basically means present, and if we look for some other hints, easy to observe might be something that the answer will mean a synonym for. If we were to bucket the answers into a synonym group, a rough meaning, the answers will never overlap. That's how you want to think about it. That's why it's so powerful to put it in your own words. If you're correct roughly about what the answer choice means, for the purposes of the SAT, you know what it means. When we look at which choice actually works, A is pretty close to present when we look at the easy to observe hint. We'll come back to it. Intriguing doesn't really make sense. It doesn't fit present or easy to observe. Reveal individual preferences. Intriguing doesn't fit. Significant might work. It's between A and C so far. Useful doesn't really fit for the same reasons as B. It doesn't fit this present or easy to observe hint. C is a easy answer to pick, but it's not that because it's not exactly fitting the synonyms. This is answer choice C is something you might pick if you weren't understanding what the SAT specifically is going for. It wants you to match it to the actual hints in the passage, which means the answer in question 3 is actually going to be A. This question on the right, question 4, is pretty tough actually. I'll read it out to you, but really try this one on your own and think about how we just did question 3 by thinking about synonyms and double negatives and how the logic of the passage works. It is by no means blank to recognize the influence of Dutch painter Hieronymus Bosch, it doesn't matter if you can pronounce these names, on Ali Banisadr's paintings. Indeed, Banisadr himself cites Bosch as an inspiration. However, some scholars have suggested that the ancient Mesopotamian poem, Epic of Gilgamesh, may have had a far greater impact on Banisadr's work. Look at this blank and think about what this question is. We realize this second part is almost irrelevant. Let's just focus on the first part for now, and we'll use the second part for extra info if we need it. It is by no means something to recognize the influence of Hieronymus Bosch. It is by no means wrong, potentially. If we look at the second part of that exact sentence, indeed, Banisadr himself cites Bosch as an inspiration. This is a tricky problem, so we don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole. It's hard to always predict an answer perfectly. We have a good idea, and we're starting to understand what this question is asking of us. Let's look through the answer choices. I don't know if substantial quite works. I think substantial is going to be more in the group of enough or an amount. I don't think it's A. I'm not going to cross it out yet. And one thing you should learn here is if I'm not sure, I'm going to think through it and I'm not going to cross it out. I'm just going to actually let my brain finish its thought, go through all the answer choices. B, satisfying. I don't think satisfying fits. It definitely doesn't fit the antonym or synonym of something such as correct or in line, something to that effect. Unimportant is close. It might be in that substantial category of maybe, but not quite yet. Appropriate is another one where if it wasn't a double negative, I think it might be appropriate. Appropriate is also very close. We're going to cross it out because of this double negative. It is by no means. It is by no means appropriate implies it's not okay, but the second half of the sentence says it is okay. Paraphrasing here. However, this actually helps me understand something about the question. It would be appropriate if it was inappropriate. So we're missing this double negative correction type thing. What has that is actually C. It is by no means substantial doesn't work for the same reason D doesn't work. We're actually looking for something that cancels out the double negative. It is by no means, so the answer is going to end up being C. We're working on question 16. I'll give you a second to pause the video and try it yourself. This is a logic question. Which quotation from the interviews best illustrates the claim? So we are focused on the claim when we read this. Art collectives like the United States and Vietnam-based collective The Propellers Group or Cuba's Los Carpinteros are groups of artists who agree to work together, perhaps for stylistic reasons or to advance shared political ideas or to help mitigate the cost of supplies and studio space. Regardless of the reasons, art collectives usually involve some collaboration among the artists. Based on a recent series of interviews with various art collectives, an art journalist claims, whatever he's about to say is going to be very specific, that this can be difficult for artists who are often used to having sole control over their work. What does this refer to? This refers to collaboration. So there's something about collaboration causing potential issues with artists used to own work. I promise that the answer will cover this and probably nothing else. The other thing to look out for is if the answer choice now is too specific. Whatever you find in here has to be supported up here. Let's look at choice A. The first collective I joined included many talented artists. We enjoyed each other's company. Because we had a hard time sharing credit and responsibility for our work, the collective didn't last. Could be A. That fits the collab used to own work. We work together, but that doesn't mean individual projects are equally a product of all of us. Many of our projects are primarily the responsibility of whoever proposed the work to the group. This doesn't show any sort of problem. It's probably not B. Having worked as a member of a collective for several years, it's sometimes hard to recall what it was like to work alone, but without the collective support. But that support encourages my individual expression rather than limits it. This is almost the opposite of what we were looking for. The collaboration didn't work because they were used to working on their own, not C. Sometimes an artist, from looking at D, sometimes an artist outside the collective will choose to collaborate with us on a project, but all of these projects fit within the larger themes of the work the collective does on its own. It's not D. See how B, C, and D don't even talk about anything in the passage. We predicted the answer, and that is the correct answer. This is actually probably a medium or hard question on the SAT, and just looking at it systematically, almost ignoring their names beyond just reading it, is how we efficiently solve these. Here's the thing with the math. The math section is not as formulaic as the reading. Pun intended. What this means is you can try to anticipate the exact types of questions, but there is always some new way to trick you. Believe me, once upon a time, I did math competitions, and on competition day, they found a way to punch me in the ego with a tricky or unexpected questions. They always found a way. I bet that sounds familiar to some of those who take practice tests and do really well, and then bomb it on test day. So what do? We think in terms of concepts, and we try to be super resourceful. This means we break down the SAT questions into concept toolboxes. Try to think, what concept are they pointing me towards? The question makers have to stick to these limited rules, limited logic sets, limited topics, even if there are a million ways to make it complicated within these constraints. Unfortunately, if you were unlucky enough to have a year or two of COVID virtual math lessons, you are probably not thinking of math conceptually enough. Don't worry, with 20% more focus and 30% more deliberate practice, you can fix this within a few months and crush the SAT. In terms of resources, you need to be using resources during the test, using your pen, using your scratch paper. More generally, you can use these resources. The real battle isn't in finding stuff. There's plenty of free stuff out there. I'm sure if you know how to use Google, you can find it yourself. The problem most kids have is that their attention and their discipline is under pressure. You need to figure out what it takes to put your phone away and do some math. Anyways, here's a few math tips to get you started. First and foremost, if you ever hear a math teacher or someone like me say, check your work, that doesn't mean just look at your work and pretend like you did it again. It actually means redo the problem. There should be a secondary way, some sort of connection, some question or piece of information you can put your answer back into, some formula, some equation that will connect, and it's not exactly how you solved it. What people think checking your work means is checking your arithmetic. That's not it. It means redoing the problem and making sure that when we thought about it conceptually, that we even did that correctly. That's a bit complicated. All it really means is do the problem again in a different way. Okay, here's an advanced tip. For some of the tougher problems, if you're struggling to figure out what they're even talking about, once you do identify a concept or two, again, if you watched a previous video, you know this, but the toolkit or math toolbox for the SAT that I recommend looking at and sort of memorizing is in the description below. Look at the problem in these advanced questions and think, why did they give me this information? Have I used this in the problem yet? The new SAT actually doesn't give too much extra info to try to trick you with red herrings, especially on the tougher math problems. They actually make it so conceptually tough sometimes that they're not trying to trick you with extra info. You're supposed to use everything they give you. We will see this in the examples later in the video. Now, finally, you need to hustle. I teach students now, and speaking from personal experience, I'm not ultra talented at math, but I did get an 800 on both of my PSATs, both of my SATs, and both of my subject tests when I was in high school. I might be an old man, but I was able to do that with these tools that you see on screen and this math toolbox mindset. I was fortunate to do those math competitions. It gave me a leg up on SAT testing, which is unfortunately for some people, fortunately for some people, really important. What we need to do, what I'm not seeing in a lot of my students, is the hustle, a little bit of positive desperation, we can call it. When you do a math test, specifically the math portion of the SAT, it's not that important. It's really not. But for you as a kid right now, it's one of the more important things you've done. So you've got to bring it, okay? Here's a few tips on the way out. I will combine these tips with my focus exercise to help you with all this. Anyways, good luck in June. Good luck this summer. Take some time to try these problems. They're tricky. This question on the right, an isosceles right triangle has a hypotenuse of length 58. What is the perimeter of this triangle? This is already pointing us towards two concept toolbox ideas, an isosceles right triangle and what a hypotenuse is. If you want to think about an isosceles right triangle, you should know that if side length is x, then hypotenuse is square root of 2 times x. Square root of 2 is about 1.4. And that checks out that the hypotenuse would be longer than the side length. If we want to think about this hypothetical triangle with side length 58, how do we go from 58 to the side length x? This is actually going backwards from multiplying by square root of 2. So we divide by square root of 2. Each side length is actually 58 divided by the square root of 2, which is roughly 1.4. You can just brute force this with Desmos, and you will find that the answer will be C. If you want to do it cleaner than that, you'll see that 58 over square root of 2 simplified is square root of 2 times square root of 2. These become 2. Up top is just the square root of 2. So each side is 58 over the square root of 2. 58 times the square root of 2 over 2. That's each side. So if we were to multiply by 2, then the length of the side legs together would be 58 times square root of 2. But we have to remember the hypotenuse is still there, and we're looking for the perimeter. The answer will be C, which is 58 plus 58 times the square root of 2. We can see how if we understand what the question is hinting towards, we can immediately go into the right concept toolbox and think through common mistakes and check our work really well and check our thought process. The answer is C. Question 27 is very tough. We need to anticipate some concepts, multiple concepts, and really be on the lookout for getting tricked by the English, by everything. This is one of the hardest math problems I've seen on the SAT. Let's look at it. function f is defined by f of x equals negative a to the x plus b. This is already a weird format. I'm not used to this coming up too often on the SAT, so I'm on the lookout that there's some concept in play that I'm not ready for yet, where a and b are constants, all right? In the xy plane, the graph of y equals f of x minus 15. So this thing, minus 15, has a y-intercept at, y-intercept is a concept, here. The product of a and b is 65 over 7. What is the value of a? If you take enough SAT practice questions, you'll know that you can come back to this product thingy. It's probably not the first thing we want to look at. We want to go in order a little bit. Let's look at what the function actually is. It's y equals negative a to the x plus b minus 15. This right here, negative a to the x, has a couple of concepts in play. We'll come back to it. The first one being, in this format, when the negative is on the outside, it actually means negative 1 times whatever's to the right of it. Whatever we get from the inside here will have a negative attached to it. So if the answer, a to the x, ends up being negative somehow, then we'll make it positive. And if whatever's within here, a to the x, is positive, we'll make it negative. Let's look at what other information they gave us. Remember, the advanced tip was to try to use all the information, or when you're checking your work, see how it fit. Y-intercept is a concept. Y-intercept means when x equals 0, y equals negative 99 over 7. If I didn't know what to do here, luckily I do, and hopefully you will too in a couple of months, or hopefully a couple of days. I'm just going to plug this in. This is a concept. They want me to work on this somewhere. Let's see where we get. A concept of the y-intercept is that when x equals 0, y equals something. Let's just do that. Negative 99 over 7 equals negative parentheses a to the 0 plus b minus 15. Now I see what concept they're hinting at. Anything to the power of 0 is 1. That's the concept. And we can add the negative 99 over 7 to this side. Let's just do it step by step. Equals negative 1 plus b minus 15. So b minus 16 equals negative 99 over 7. Pardon the mess we're getting into here a little bit. Basically, b is going to equal 13 over 7. And we're not done yet. Are we looking for b? No, we're looking for a. How do we find that? They did give us this last piece of info. A times b is 65 over 7. So 13, I'm going to change this equal sign into a little arrow. 13 over 7 times a, since 13 over 7 is b, equals 65 over 7. I hope you can figure out or see that we just need to multiply the top here to make this equal. So a is going to equal 5. Hopefully you tried this problem on your own, and if it didn't make sense, what I would recommend is you retry this problem on your own with your hand and write it out a couple of times until it makes sense. Do not settle for good enough. Even if it doesn't make sense right now, even after I've explained it, retry it, take your time. Understanding the concepts once, just the things, the 2 or 3 things we talked about, understanding it well is way more valuable long-term and will increase your score rapidly once you are able to focus and use this information. Here's some tips for when you study. Obviously, turn your phone off and put it away. Silent is not good enough. Buzzing is not good enough. It will distract you. Take it out of your pocket. There's been studies that show having it in your pocket distracts you as well. Not as much as having it in front of you, but it does distract you. Second, try to celebrate and appreciate the same way that you might be negative towards this test. It's not fair if you only experience the negative emotions and you don't celebrate when you get a problem right. I know it's frustrating, but that's how it is. Here's the focus exercise. Really try it. Listen along, put your stuff away, be in a quiet place when you do this. Think of a voice in your head. The goal here is to force our brain to really make this imagination, this imaginary voice, hit the same part of our brain that a real audible voice would. Start counting with that voice. We'll call this the count. Which side is that count coming from? For most people, it will come from the dominant side of their hand, aka if you're right-handed, it will come from your right brain. If you're left-handed, it'll come from your left brain. And if it didn't really connect the first time, close your eyes, try it again. For 99% of people, it will lean towards their quote-unquote dominant side. And the more side dominant you are, the further this voice will seem to come from that side. The discipline trigger portion of this exercise, perhaps you can guess where we're headed, is called the counter count. Wherever that voice currently is in your head, this deliberately imagined audible voice, try to move it to the other side. If you're a little more centered naturally, try to move it behind yourself and really focus on your brain making this happen. You can almost feel the left side of your body activating if you're right-handed. If you do this correctly, you will feel resistance when you do the counter count. This means that you are not using a lot of your central nervous system when you're naturally thinking. This is learned behavior because the internet overwires our brain in certain ways and underwires it in other ways. This discipline trigger, this counter count, is a very deliberate way to warm up our brain and just be aware of our central nervous system. A lot of times when right-handed people take a test and tense up, their entire left side of their body's locked up. It's a very right hand, right brain, left brain type of thing. If we're deliberate about this and know what it feels like to engage our left brain, our left side, our central nervous system will naturally become better at taking things like the SAT.